They partnered with OpenAI. They did the equivalent of 700 people, 700 full-time employees worth of customer support in 1 month. They managed to send, the work that would take 700 people to answer all these customer support tickets. They managed to do it with AI. We want to build systems, build companies that in the end serve society and serve the way we want to live, right? If we are entrepreneurs, if we're action driven and we aren't afraid to take risks to get what we want out of life, then it's kind of on us to decide a life that we want to, that serves us. And it's been interesting because the way that startup ecosystem and expectations and also what I've ended up doing a few times is I've built startups, but then there's such a pressure for scale, one in service of the startup, but then also there's a slippery slope to becoming the slave of the business.
That is a very wonderful way of breaking it down for me and also for the audience, right? Because most of the audience that I want to share our podcast are entrepreneurs who want to adopt AI. They have this magic word that is shining to them, that is no code, and that is where we want to attract them. By the way, I really like the way you also tie up the 4-day work week, the productivity, and I think most of the entrepreneurs right now are also looking for that. They're starving for time back. I have our guest today, Rui Vas, and we're going to talk about no-code tools for AI, and of course, we're going to start with his journey. So, Rui, if you could maybe tell me about your journey, about you in the business, how you found success so far, and also with the AI journey as well.
Thank you, first of all, for this invitation. It's been quite a non-linear path in my career so far. I started my career in robotics. I studied mechanical engineering and, always a curious person. As a kid, I would play a lot with toys and break things apart so that I tried to understand how they work. And I think that brought me to mechanical engineering. And then I understood, okay, the mechanics works, but I need to understand a step further. And then I went into electronics and then the software aspect, ended my master's in robotics, building a quadruped robot. And at 23, I was presenting my work in IROS, which was this one of the biggest conferences in the world of robotics, because I had built this quadruped robot that basically learned how to walk. It had these sensors on the feet, and based on feeling the ground, it would use some simple heuristics to understand how it should walk, and in a similar way as an animal will figure out how to walk. I was trying to replicate that same learning curve for a robot, and this was part of a biorobotics research lab in EPFL in Switzerland. I started kind of with that academic background, and so my first experience was going into a robotics company designing robots for pharma. I was designing kind of this robotic arm that would do pipetting. It would automate processes for research, where you would have the researchers and the PhD students kind of have to do 200 samples of a specific concentration of some liquids, and this was very boring. It was taking a lot of time from the researchers, from the students. And so this robot would come and have enough accuracy to perform these 200, like like here, these 200 samples of that specific concentration. And so that was an interesting first step. But 6 months later, 6 months after starting working with this company designing robots, I was bored, because it was I started doing mechanical engineering. I was designing the parts of the robots. I learned a lot about design, but I saw the world of software moving so fast, and I felt like, oh, I want to learn about software. At the time, I spent a little bit of time looking at crypto. This was 2017, and crypto was booming at the time. There was a good cycle for crypto, and good early cycle. I had met some very smart people at the university who were doing incredible projects around crypto. They were investing, and I myself had invested a little bit, and had. I joke that I remember going. I had. I'm from Portugal, and as a Portuguese kid starting a career in Switzerland and having a good job with a good salary, it sounded great. But then I was making more money on the bus to work trading crypto than actually the day of work, and so that made me feel like, oh man, I need to jump on this on crypto and on software as well. So it was just guided by curiosity, wanting to learn more about software, wanting to dive deeper into my understanding of this world that was moving very fast. And what I saw in mechanical engineering at the time is that it was a little bit of a slower pace of innovation. I saw like materials were still the same, kind of, they were evolving slower, and so I wanted to be in the fast track. Late 2017, I left that job, and then I went through a very interesting period of 2018, where I started the year learning how to develop web applications with courses on Udemy. I spent like 20 euros, did a couple courses like on React, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, like just the basics to understand web development. And through my network in Switzerland, I studied for 2 months, and then on the third month, I became a freelancer. I worked as a freelancer, and I made like 10,000 Swiss francs which is like $10,000 in a month, which for me at the time was like, wow, this is amazing. Like in Portugal, where I come from at the time, software engineers were making like 1,000 a month. I was making 10 times that, having learned in 2 months. So it was like, this is crazy. And so at the time, I was just in conversation with a good friend who was also who I met as one of the supervisors for my master thesis. Super smart guy. I felt really inspired by him. Yeah, in conversation, we were talking about the future of work, the future of remote work, work online with something more fractional than this 9 to 5 job that you go to the office and come back and have this. And we're talking about crypto and new economics, and this is now like 7 years ago, and we have like these crazy ideas of how the world would be different moving forward with the advances of crypto and AI and all of this. It's a long story. Do stop me if I'm taking too long.
Pretty interesting, and it's pretty curious. I'm really very curious about how you end up really deciding to stick with AI. And laptop lifestyle is what everybody wants, right? And who doesn't want to go in Thailand for a vacation and you can just work like 1 hour or 2 hours in a day because you're automating your work, right?
Yeah, you will see here on the background the 4 hours work week. I think it was the book that I was reading back in the day, and getting inspired to automate tasks. To how can I have the best lifestyle. I had at the time just gone to Thailand and Bali for a few months for the first time as well. So I was very inclined into how can I create something that is growing, that doesn't require me to be there 9 to 5, that can be automated, and how can I leverage software to improve my quality of life.
I also have this kind of mindset, and most of the entrepreneurs, if you do it right, you are building a machine, an automation, when you are actually working above the business. And that is actually one of the things that we are going to talk about in this podcast. But maybe maybe it could be here, maybe it could be a different episode, but it's very interesting how you put it, as how you can have a 4-day work week. I mean, I have this community that we're talking about 2-day work week. I hope that could be possible.
We want to build systems, build companies that in the end serve society and serve the way we want to live, right? If we are entrepreneurs, if we're action driven, and we aren't afraid to take risks and to get what we want out of life, then it's kind of on us to decide a life that we want to, that serves us. And it's been interesting because the way that startup ecosystem and expectations, and it's and also what I've ended up doing a few times is I've built startups, but then there's such a pressure for scale that I end up being in service of the startup, but then also there's a slippery slope to becoming the slave of the business, because I've laughed about this with many entrepreneurs who left a 9-to-5 job because they wanted freedom, and then they ended up working 24 hours a day because now all they think about is the business.
Well,
and so
that's I think I'm also guilty for that sometimes.
yeah.
So, and that's pretty awesome because like I read this book called E-Myth, and this is from Michael Gerber. I don't know if you've read it. Most of us entrepreneurs, we tend to be so emotionally attached into the business, and we're just putting ourselves there like a technician. So while we're a technician, we're putting hours, like if you compare it from 9 to 5, we're just like 5 is better salary, better benefits, right? You can rest in the weekends. But if you're an entrepreneur, I don't think you can sleep. I don't think you can sleep like, oh, what happens to this? What happens to that? So that's pretty interesting on where you are coming from and where you are now. And by the way, when you're in this journey, when you are looking for AI tools, you were building apps, you were building robotics. It's a long way, and it's been an interesting ride. But I also see that you are into the AI tools right now for no code. So what's your biggest challenge there that you have faced?
Yeah, so I think coming back to the North Star, to that desire of having a set of systems that serve me and that serve the people I care about, and that serve the larger community. Reinventing the wheel doesn't serve anyone. Like building something that has already been built, that it's almost like a law of physics of kind of like lower entropy. Like you don't want to be spending resources in something that is already solved, right? If the railway is there, you don't build a railway track just next to it if this one is working perfectly. It's a bad use of resources. So the idea for me of no code is low code is a very natural evolution, because and even my first startup that I built kind of like after this, I went on to build a startup. I moved to Silicon Valley, spent 6 months doing an accelerator, and the idea of that startup was that software development should be streamlined into some blocks of that are repeated, like authentication. Like everybody's building an app, you need a login. Like it doesn't make sense for 10,000 engineers to be doing login functionality separately. Like someone built a great login, and then everybody use it, and pay for it, or so there was this idea of building blocks that people can reuse, and of course there's some aspects of proprietary technology. Like if you want to build the most secure login, and that's a competitive edge for you, then you don't want to share it with others and you want to make more money out of it. I don't know if login is the best example here, but what I see in software is a little bit a difference between the commoditized software, things that aren't differentiating, and then software that is differentiating, that is intellectual property. The reason why I'm sharing this is because this commoditized software, it makes a lot of sense to be building blocks that you have, in a way, the capacity to go on the platform and just drag and drop something and build something fast. And that's what I think no code front end, like no code application builders or that allow. And then in terms of the no code automations, let's say, it's creating simplification, right? There's a lot of complexity. All the things that are happening for me to be having this conversation with you right now are pretty complex. Like all the systems that need to be running. Right now I have a camera that is from my phone connected to real time to this computer that is connected to this microphone. There's kind of like the operating system of the computer, and then there's a network connecting the two of us. And you're in China, I'm in Portugal. This is very it's pretty crazy. Everything that's happening here, but it is possible because of abstraction layers. Someone has figured out the best way to make the operating system, and they're working on it. And then we get to just focus on having this conversation because all the other abstraction layers, all the other complex stuff has been taken care of. And so what I see with no code automations, with no code applications, is people are taking care of the complicated wiring and making it as simple as possible so that more things become possible with less wiring.
I like the analogy because most of the entrepreneurs, they want to adopt implementing AI in their business, but they just don't know where to start. And having to learn that there's a need of a code, or there's a need of hiring an IT or a tech personnel in the business, it could be pricey, right? It could be pricey, especially for a startup. So that is a very wonderful way of breaking it down for me and also for the audience, right? Because most of the audience that we want to share our podcast are entrepreneurs who want to adopt AI. They have this magic word that is shining to them, that is no code, and that is where we want to attract them. Do you, in your opinion, and by the way, I really like the way you also tie up the 4-day work week, the productivity. And I think most of the entrepreneurs right now are also looking for that. They're starving for time back, right? And maybe you can share with me, like, what's the specific tools, roughly, like what do you use in your business to increase efficiency, productivity, to take back the time?
In terms of tools, at the moment, things that I'm using are Airtable, which seems like not the first thing you would think, perhaps, but it's I use it for one reason. It's a database. It's a full-fledged database that has kind of the functionalities of a database, like search, like I can group by. I kind of can do complicated things with it, and at the same time is as simple as a spreadsheet for a non-technical user. It's versatile. I use it in combination with make.com at the moment. What that means is that I create a set of automations that when I change something on Airtable, automatically there's a trigger to an automation that goes and, let's say, enriches data. Let's say I am, for example, one of the use cases is growing a business. I want to reach out to new leads. I want to have new conversations, and sometimes there is a list of people who are in my ideal customer profile in my ICP. But I'll give you an example. I went to late last year. I went to Slush, which is this great conference in Helsinki, and I have a list of 5,000 attendees, and it's an amazing conference because it's very intentional. Like the people who go there, they're investors, they're founders who are very intentional about doing business. And so I think like this list is amazing. Like I have this list of people I want to reach out to, I want to talk to, but it's 5,000 people. How do I make sure I'm getting value? How do I know who I should reach out to first? And depending on also the stage of where I am, what am I looking for? If I'm looking to raise capital, then talking to investors is going to be more relevant than talking to other founders. At the moment, I am working with Altar, which is a venture builder. We help entrepreneurs, we help founders launch great products. And so in that context, it makes sense for me to talk to a lot of founders, understand what are their pain points in launching products. I would love for us to dive deeper into what you were saying there before about the complexity of hiring the right team for software development, like how that, like I'm passionate about that, and there's a lot to explore there. But coming back to this Airtable, I have an Airtable with a list of these interesting people with their LinkedIn and so on, and I can now connect that to API from Perplexity that goes and let's say researches the company that they work in, or the VC that they work at. They I can set up a set of background research that automatically gives me a summary, so that my outreach is a lot more relevant, that the timing is a lot more relevant. And then there's a kind of a game that I'm still fine tuning, which is what to automate versus what to make human. I think it's something interesting to explore as well.
That's beautiful. Just to give an audience more of a context about Perplexity, like what do you see the tool? As you mentioned earlier, you mentioned about what Airtable is, what's Make.
Yeah, why do I think these are maybe not in isolated? They wouldn't be super powerful tools. I think like Airtable is fun, but it wouldn't be super powerful isolated. But the thing with Make.com is it's an integrations tool. Maybe if you haven't heard of it, you've heard of Zapier, which are similar. Make.com is, I think, was launched. It grew later, so it's more I think AI focused. I prefer it. It's slightly cheaper, so I prefer it to Zapier. But what it allows is that it has thousands of possibilities for integrations, which means I can connect my Airtable to my LinkedIn, to my X, to my Google Spreadsheets, to my Google Drive, to Google Cloud, text to speech, to Microsoft Azure, object recognition. Like there's infinite possibilities because I can connect basically to any API out there. So any company in the world that releases an API that is relevant for me, I can connect that with Make to my current systems.
I know that API is familiar for us, but
yes, we can explain.
Yes.
Yeah. So API is the way that basically apps communicate between each other, and the internet basically communicates on what's called the backend. So basically, what we see in a web application or in a mobile application, we see an interface that is made for users. But whenever that interface shows us some data, that data came to it via an interface for an application interface or API.
So in other words, it's like a bridge to connect from one app to another, and the app can, before and now, with make.com, what you're trying to say that you can actually create a continuous workflow, and it will also build automation.
Yeah, let me give you a very practical example. So right now, there's so many things happening in AI every day. Uh, on Monday, I think that the latest thing is this, and then by Thursday, I think I've changed my mind because, um, you know, some new functionality came. So it's notoriously hard to keep track. I don't think there's been an era, an age where we've had so many people investing in learning something, and the pace of innovation being so fast is like an exponential, accelerating pace of innovation. And so it's becoming also very relevant and important to keep track of news, to understand what's going on. And at the same time, the amount of noise in engineering, we have a signal to noise ratio, which is like in 100 news, how many of them are actually written in a way that it's information that is relevant for you, and how much of it is propaganda? And there's a lot of propaganda for information ratio. To have not important sources, but reliable sources of information that we can have as source of truth, and then have some systems that can curate those pieces of news for us to digest. And so one thing that I've set up is I've subscribed to an AI newsletter that I love and that I trust. And every day I get that AI newsletter on my email, and I have an automation that whenever that gets on my email, an automation on make.com will pick up that email, mark it as read, grab the content, put it on Airtable, and then I have the whole newsletter on Airtable. And that triggers another automation that then grabs that newsletter, reads it, and comes up with small digestible pieces of information with new tools. So it's kind of like it categorizes the information that I've gotten in this newsletter, and then generates a post for LinkedIn so that I can share every day the latest tooling, the latest news, that are relevant to that day. Because I got this newsletter that I trust that has a lot of information. I don't want to share like the bulk newsletter. I want to have like small little digested pieces of information, and then it automatically generates this LinkedIn post. And I could automate it that automatically that triggers then to post on LinkedIn, and then I have to do nothing, and I just have one LinkedIn post a day, or I could have multiple. At the moment, I'm not doing that. But I have the whole process until it generates the LinkedIn post, and then I go there, I read the post, I see if, is this relevant, is this useful, and then I click a button on Airtable that posts to LinkedIn. So here you see like so many different platforms connected. I have my Gmail connected to through Make to Airtable, that is connected then also through Make to ChatGPT and Perplexity, and then to digest this information, and then again through Make connected to LinkedIn that then posts when I click a button. So I think we're in this world of interconnectivity of apps, and having a layer of integration where I can basically connect anything to anything. It's like I can click if I click A on my laptop, then I want to trigger the to buy Nvidia stock. Or click N.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I'm really curious how you made an automation. I think our viewers would probably be also curious to learn from you. But going back to that automation, like how long did you build that automation?
How long ago?
How long did
how long did it take?
build that automation? Was it easy? Because You mentioned it was just by a touch of a button. So it's like the touch of a button is for you to approve. And
Yeah,
I mean, how amazing would that be? If you're
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
think about before, if you're gonna do the research on your own, like it would probably take you hours, and probably it's gonna be one job of one person in a company.
Yeah, if you would wanna keep track of it without having automations, you would hire a full-time person to, read the newsletter every day and make a quick report of the news, and then manage your social media and yeah.
And imagine if you can streamline your manpower instead of you have human capital, but you also wanted to streamline instead of spending the whole day researching and checking and all this, and you have one person to just okay, I'll have a quality assurance check if this will go through, and then probably he or she can do other things, which instead of hiring five people, one for LinkedIn, one for maybe for YouTube, for Facebook, or for other social media, you get one person to just do everything.
Absolutely. What I see is that traditionally in companies, there's a lot of ideas, initiatives, projects that, oh, we would love to launch this marketing campaign. Let's do it Q4 in 3 quarters, because we don't have capacity to do it now. Like, I think now things are just accelerating to a point that with the same resources, you can grow a company much faster. We're talking about, there's an interesting case study from Klarna, which is this company. It's a credit company. Basically, it allows you to buy things in installments instead of paying everything up front in different websites. It's a company here in Europe that has grown very fast. It's a great case study of a fintech, and they had, I think, in 1 month they partnered with OpenAI, and in 1 month they did the equivalent of 700 people, 700 full-time employees work worth of customer support. In 1 month, they managed to send, the work that would take 700 people to answer all these customer support tickets. They managed to do it with AI, which means I don't think they fired 700 people, but what happened is that the response time went down from 11 minutes on average to 2 minutes on average, which is a crazy improvement. So imagine you have this big company just for customer support. They have thousands of people, and still they have 11 minutes average answer time, because they, to hire another customer support person, the ticket comes and then you need to answer, figure out what it is. They've implemented AI, and after 1 month they had the full-time job of 700 people automated, which meant that they just increased the quality of their product and of their service to the clients. It brings us up a social question. It brings up like questions around the future of work, but definitely some of these tasks that are more automatable, that are tasks that maybe don't add a lot of business value, but they're needed for operations, they'll naturally disappear as well. But the key idea is that with the same amount of people, we'll be able to innovate much faster, do cooler projects, be more creative. And I think that the future is quite bright in that, I hope, as well.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. I mean, customer service, I could imagine while waiting on the phone, that irritates a lot of people. And if you could
Yeah.
just minimize that waiting time, I'm sure your business is you're gonna be better. As you said, I think from 10 minutes to, was it 12 minutes to 2? So that's probably 6x.
Yeah.
That's reduction of waiting time, and that's beautiful. And
Yeah.
I would really love to explore other departments. Like it could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be um, maybe the mundane tasks. Like I mean, for me as an entrepreneur, I don't like finance and
Yeah. The
areas like
accounting, yeah.
accounting. It's boring, but that actually is actually important in the
It's super
business.
important. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we still
Yeah.
need to put some attention because um, without us putting attention, we don't know if the business was still run.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
probably, I'm just curious about, like you mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of tools right now, and there's a lot of updates, and when businesses or entrepreneurs would like to start adopting AI, would you think that they will be having difficulties in adopting, or what's
Mm.
your view on that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's going to be a big need for upskilling, meaning like people will need to train to learn and adapt and be flexible. Um, and specifically when we're talking about also the social impact, the the change in jobs, and we can look back in the maybe 100 years ago, a big portion of the population was focused on agriculture, like manual agriculture, going to the field, you know, and planting things and collecting things and doing manual work. And then we evolved, and those people needed to maybe grow their level of education and study accounting, study finance, study all these things, right? I think there's going to be a need for upskilling, particularly for entrepreneurs, which was your question. I think that there's got to be a like entrepreneurs are people who wear many hats already. Like when you start a company, it's kind of an embryo. It has all the components of a company, but it's maybe in one, and then five people, and then 10 people, but it has all the components. So you need to do finance, you need to do accounting, you need to do the tech, someone needs to develop the code, someone needs to think the product, someone needs to do the design, all the aspects. The promise of AI is that you can, with a small, very smart, or like very well-trained team, you can do a lot. Because if you build systems that all of a sudden handle your handle marketing more efficiently, and you have like someone who knows how to leverage AI for marketing and sales, someone who knows how to leverage AI for fast development and code and building product. Typically, you have these two aspects of a business, right? You need to, of at least like a modern tech business, is like you need to build and you need to sell. So if you can build, if you know how to use AI to build, and you know how to use AI to sell, and then as it grows, you use AI in good systems to operate it efficiently, going into this vision that a lot of people speak about of having initially there was the idea was a three-person company to reach $1 billion in valuation. Some people speak about, one-person company could do that. I think there's still, from the human nature, I think I think one person would not. I mean, I don't know who am I to say, but I think that having a small group of very specialized people can lead to incredible results. The In terms of action plans for entrepreneurs, I think is staying current with the tools. There's also a lot to be said about positioning a company when the whole industries are shifting very fast. So I'd say if you're a profile of an entrepreneur that has 20 years of experience in an industry, then one kind of no-brainer way to innovate is, let's bring AI into the thing that I know deeper than anybody else, and I have a competitive advantage because I know that industry. One example is, where I met this this incredible human. He's he was he's launching a big project in pharma, and he has 15 years experience in pharma, and we're talking about collaborating and working together. But because he has this 15 years experience in pharma, he knows the people, he knows the industry, he knows what the industry needs, how it innovates, how it accelerates, and now how it's regulated. The clinical trials and the drug. So there's a lot of context that it's really important that you have those 10, 15 years experience, 20 years experience in an industry. But then with that baggage and understanding where AI is today, I think there's got to be a lot of intersections where you can innovate based on what's possible today that was never possible before for that industry.
Having that slight edge would give you this unfair advantage. Everyone right now, in my opinion, could probably adopt with AI, but having the slight advantage or slight edge would move your business needle forward faster versus people who doesn't have special. But going back to, if you go back to the tools itself, do we need to specialize tools in some way, or in your opinion, would it be would we be a generalist into no code tools and just know more tools, or what's your take?
It's important that you know what is possible today. There's innovation happening fast, and so there's these moments where something new is possible that wasn't possible yesterday. And so keeping track of that innovation is important. Now, I don't think that happens, once a day or once a week, but there's like certain kind of milestones. And looking back at the last few months, some milestones I've seen are, for example, Anthropic Claude launching artifacts, which is kind of like a new paradigm of I can collaborate with a model, and I see the code on the side, and I kind of have dialogue with the code, and then I can publish that, which I don't see after testing and after trying to bring to business applications, I don't see that it has a huge potential. But then a few weeks later, this, through the competition, ChatGPT launched Canvas, which was a similar concept, but already allowed you to edit on the platform. Which means that now, if you want to write a paper in collaboration with AI, if you want to write a blog post for your SEO, for your marketing, if you want to write a strategy plan or a plan for a pitch deck, now instead of working on a chat, you can prompt it to give you a first version, and then you can iterate on it, and then iterate back and forth with AI, for example.
Even for ebook, if or maybe you're going to write a book, right? It's easier than ever.
Yeah. You could use a combination of voice. Let's say you're go for a walk for 15 minutes, talk about your your journey, and then that becomes context to give you a chapter 1 of your book, and then you go and edit it, and maybe that's becomes faster. Another moment is, for example, the launch of O1 models, these reasoning models that now take time to think and create more. They hallucinate less. They have they're in a way smarter. So what I would do as an entrepreneur is just understanding and maybe the way to do that is joining some webinars. For example, yesterday and today there's an interesting conference happening. It's called Autonomous Summit, that's having these 20-minute talks back to back, I think 3 or 4 different stages some more focused on applications of AI. So finding these ways to understand what's possible and what's latest within the time that you have to dedicate to that, and then choose like a very select few tools to dive deep on, because you don't have the time to go and test the 50 different models that appear every day and be like, it's too, I think it's not worth to test oh, this week is about DeepSeek, so I'm going to go and change all my infrastructure to DeepSeek. There's got to be some softening of that curve of, stimulus to action in a way.
Yeah, and since you mentioned about DeepSeek, there's a lot of I would say buzz or shout out in the market right now. And if this kind of things happen, what would you do personally, or what would you recommend? Is it worth a try, or do we just stick to what we're using and then just wait for others to give a more better testimonial? Because, for example, for you, if let's say there's a new tool that jumps in, and suddenly you're already getting used to what you're using, and then the learning curve of every tool, as you know, it takes time for you to really understand the tool. And especially with the features are just blasting off like here and there. It's like, okay, there's a new feature here, there's a new feature. Like, imagine last year, December, OpenAI had a countdown. Every day there was a new feature, right? So imagine these types happen. And what do you recommend if you're the entrepreneur's position or shoes?
Yeah, so I've been doing this, some webinars late last year, and then I've been giving some talks. And I start my talk with this image, which is a monkey in a tool shack, kind of with a tool on his hand and looking at the tool. Image generated with the Midjourney, and I explained that, every day there's a new tool, and there's like on the background of the monkey, there's like these 50 different tools. At the pace of innovation, I understand that I'm still kind of coming from monkeys. I'm a primate, and I'm in a way an old technology, and I take time to understand, to become accustomed to this new tool. And this new tool is only useful for me if I know how to use it. So there's two aspects. One, do I know how to use it? And then is it useful for me? Do I need it? And so in this kind of like visualization of the monkey holding a tool is, where's the problem that I'm trying to solve? Is this useful for me? Was I looking for it? If it wasn't this shiny object that now, in the news, that everybody's talking about it, and if it wasn't like coming from fear of missing out, from FOMO, then would I still be looking for this tool? That's a first. Do I have something I want to improve in my life, in my business, in my systems that I can use this for? And then so that's the first. And then the second one is really taking a step back and figuring out what it is. And it's not always very clear, because now what we see is that there's the technology, and there's like maybe a small technology advancement. But then there's a marketing layer, because of the competition of, all the companies want more funding, they want more customers, they want, so there's a marketing layer, which distorts a little bit the information of what the tech actually is, and distorts it a little bit to make it like selling, right? And then we're seeing even like a layer of politics as well, like a political layer on top. So it's like you're seeing information, but you don't know where it comes from. Is this, so kind of dissecting it into what is this, and even like with DeepSeek, it wasn't very clear. Like, okay, it's a new model that is as as good as O1. It's like, or it's competing with O1, right? It's okay. So it's a large language model that's competing with O1. Okay, do I have a problem with my O1 usage? Do I spend too much on O1 that I need a cheaper version? Does it make sense for me to now like go and, if it's like similar quality than what I have today, how am I using that today? Is it too expensive? Am I spending like 100K on O1? Maybe I'm spending 10 cents a month on O1 because of I use it via API, and it's 10 cents a month. Okay, is it worth changing? Because I just, it's already, if I have O1 already in my subscription of OpenAI that I pay every month and I'm happy with it, is this new feature justifying that I cancel my subscription and move to something else, or do I like that platform? If it's in my subscription, I already have access to it, and now there's a new thing that is equal to what I have already access to, you know? So there's no, for me, there's no point in going and changing, but there's a lot of buzz and politics, and then there's like the stock market, right? Like the Nvidia stock, and so it's like there's so much complexity in the system, when it comes to being an entrepreneur and looking at how can I use this to make a product that is gonna serve my customers in my market. That's my thinking, my suggestion.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I would say logical thinking, and it's pretty good to structure it that way. Because in my encounter, there's a lot of verbal cues about, oh, there's a new tool, DeepSeek. There's so many tools out there, and I've been into these tools already, and it's kind of entrepreneurs when they jump into tools, they are focusing on the new thing, the new feature. But the question is, do they actually need it? Or maybe the question even specific is, do they actually need it now? Because maybe they actually don't need it. It's just a fancy feature, which, as you mentioned, like they're focusing on the O1 model as a competitive edge, but do we actually need it every day? And if we're using O1, sometimes it could be refinement. It could be maybe I would say narrowed use cases that we would use, not necessarily in every single thing. And but of course, different people have different preferences. They could probably jump into, as you mentioned, there's Claude, there's Perplexity, there's Gemini, there's so many tools out there. So maybe coming to that point of, these players are big, they're huge players, and there's still a resistance of, am I actually choosing the right tool? Because it begs the question about, okay, Google is not a small company. There's Claude, there's Perplexity, Anthropic, and there's DeepSeek, and there's Grok. There's so many LLMs right now. And how would you manage that? Because it's also begs the question about, am I actually using the right tool now?
So the way I'm navigating is navigating a sea of tools, right? Is first I understand categories of tools. So there's different categories of tools. As I said, there's LLMs. So if you say that there's a new LLM, then I know I kind of put it in this category of LLMs, right? And I know what they do. I kind of understand, like, okay, do I need a new LLM? How would a new LLM impact my business? Versus if you tell me, oh, there's something better than make.com for integrations. And so I have this category of integrations, workflows, automations. And maybe there's make.com there's Zapier, there's a few other tools. Inside these integrations, there's, and kind of maybe an intersection with another category of tools is like these agentic workflows, agents. We're coming a lot into this era of agents, which is still kind of like undefined a little bit. What's the real definition of an agent? Because a few months back, the definition of an agent was that it would. The definition of an agent a few months back, now the O1 model of ChatGPT already would fit that definition of an agent, because the definition of an agent 6-9 months ago was that an agent, instead of going, an LLM goes and does a task. You prompt it, gives you a response. But an agent would first generate a list of steps and then follow those steps to generate the result. But O1 now does this. It's a reasoning model. So is it an agent? Now we have the definition of actions. Okay, can it just chat back and give me text, or can it act on my social media? Can I connect it to other things? And then we go into like this kind of integration, interconnectivity, reasoning. So having these categories of tools is useful to navigate. Yeah, and I think the other aspect that was coming to me when you asked this question was having a product discipline. So I worked with altar.io, which is a product studio. We help entrepreneurs launch products, and the first part of each engagement is a product scope. In this product scope, typically there's a lot more feature reduction than feature addition. So the visionary entrepreneur that has this idea, and I've launched a couple startups myself with great ideas, and the initial excitement comes with like, oh, it could do this and this and this, and it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife that can do everything. But the truth is, in order to get all that functionality, you need to first prove, do small proof of concepts. Like, does it have a good knife? Does it have the good small set of features that will find product market fit enough to grow a customer base to then justify further investment to build the next feature and build the next feature, build the next feature. Yeah, figuring out what is that small set of features that is relevant to the client that allows us to scale. Sometimes those features have a level of network effects that are important for growth, so it's having this product discipline of intersecting what is possible today with what is relevant for our ideal client, for who we want to serve. And yeah, it's technology and business and product.
For entrepreneurs, because we are very enthusiastic, excited about our business idea. And when we come to choosing the right tools, implementing, and planning the whole, probably the whole year or 360, 90 days milestone, right? And it's good to have someone who can see it from not having the emotions attached, which can really cut down to the minimalist approach in terms of choosing the right choosing the right tools, instead of really getting to chase that shiny objects. And I fully agree on what you're doing right now, and that's pretty amazing. That's a lot of I would say there's 80 to 90% of entrepreneurs have this issue of, okay, everything is possible, right?
Yeah, you kind of need it. I think it's part of the blood, or the way entrepreneurs are made, is that there's a certain level of excitement that brings them away from a secure full-time job or a more predictable career, is because they believe that, there's something really exciting to be built. and that is true. But I think it's important to to understand the complexity, the hard thing about hard things, the complexity of really bringing a product to market and figuring out what should be built before going and figuring out how to build it.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of which, maybe you could share some of your maybe small wins or immediate wins when you started your journey. I know that you had a clever automation with LinkedIn posts, but maybe you can share more of your wins to excite our audience as well. What are possible? What are automations that you have done? And even though it's not running full blast, but maybe since you've tested, it's working, it's possible. Do you have any case that you want to share for a use case?
Yeah, I can share something that I'm working on. One thing that is exciting for me is video generation. And for example, one use case that I've come across is healthcare. So in the US, because of how healthcare is structured, and it's very in a way, it's very business oriented. It's very revenue centric in a way. There is a very short time that doctors get to spend with patients. It's something between 8 to 12 minutes per patient visit. So it's very, very short amount of time. And basically, imagine a patient arrives to see the doctor, and the doctor needs to tell him and explain a diagnosis. Something that is very important for the life of this patient. And he has 8 to 12 minutes to explain the diagnosis, the paths to a cure, like a procedure, that explaining a surgery, explaining these are things that are very important, for the decision making of the patient around his health. But a doctor doesn't have a lot of time to even be emotionally aware, in a way. Like you're telling someone they have a complex disease. This is something that I would love the person giving me the news to have a little bit of time and have a human touch to it. And so one project that I'm currently working on is grabbing all the diagnoses and procedures from the American Medical Association. There's a list. Grabbing those and basically generating explainer videos, and there's a process to that, but generating explainer videos for a diagnosis that then gets vetted, both like the script and the video gets vetted by a doctor. And so what that would look like is that the doctor could send this information, send more information to the patient to digest without one-on-one time. And then that one-on-one time could be more focused on questions, on like guiding the patient through the procedures. So this is one specific use case, but what excites me about that tech is now, like you can combine, like we're combining like a video avatar of the doctor with a background video generation relevant to that diagnosis, with perplexity research on the diagnosis, the medical accurate information. So it's possible to build systems that add real value to society in a fairly low cost, in a fairly hacking around way, and then of course you need to build things that scale. But I think what's possible today is that, and what I wanted to share with that use case is that it's possible to connect all these bits of innovation, like the video generation, the avatars, the voice generation, the text, the research, connecting all of this for one use case that adds value to humans. I think that's very exciting for me.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a very awesome use case. Since we talk about some sort of a personal touch, maybe in your opinion, like how do you balance automating processes, but as well as identifying the part where you still maintain the human touch? with your customers? Because I think most of the fears right now, when entrepreneurs would adopt with AI, they would think about, would I lose the human touch? Because like most of the time, like especially let's say for example, if it's a chatbot you're building,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
most of the perception is, will I use, will I sacrifice the human touch because
Yeah.
I am just communicating with a chatbot.
My thinking is that we want human touch in some in some aspects, and then it depends on the person also. Some person, like you might, some customers might want to go to a cafe and have that conversation with the person in the cafe, you know. But some person might be like in a rush and they don't want, and they're in a cafe and let's say there's three people queue, you know, and they don't want it because they and so they would rather that it would be more efficient. They would rather a machine that, you know, would deliver a perfect coffee in an efficient way. So one thing is you can't really so it depends on person to person, and it depends on also the scenario. I'll give you an example. There's a company that I think I had the best customer experience of a refund, like a software company. This was impressive for me because it was 3 or 4 years ago. I was less expecting this, but I was charged by a software that I didn't that wasn't using, and I emailed the company, and automatically I got automatic reply. Oh, this is about a refund. Click this button, refund automatically back in my bank account, for example. For me it was a perfect experience because it was super fast. I didn't have to talk to anyone. For the company, it was much cheaper than having a person answer those emails, right? So they had a system that automatically categorized refund emails, and they didn't even screen the refund. Like they trusted the client and said, like, if you're asking good for a refund, no questions asked, just click this button. And so my experience as a customer was like, this is amazing. And for the company, it was a system that was built once and was working, right? So some products, the human touch is going to be relevant. Some people will want that. This is actually it's an ongoing discussion with the because it comes a little bit from tendencies, and I think it's a healthy discussion. I'm an engineer, right? So I have the engineer hat, and a part of me, values efficiency very much, and wants to make things efficient and grow faster through efficiency. The chief marketing officer at Altar doesn't think doesn't think the same. He wants the human touch. He's like, don't automate things. Like, go and talk to people, understand the clients, understand. Have you really like dive deeper and understood the pain points and understood how our positioning. So he, in his view, the perfect day spent is talking to people who are in the ideal customer profile, understanding them deeper and deeper, and understanding better how to serve them. And that cannot be automated. And for me, I totally get his point. and if I'm and I for me, there's a cost to the inefficiency of putting a time. Let's say I speak for 30 minutes or 1 hour with someone, and then it turns out that they don't have the budget, or they don't have they're not in that moment where they can become a customer, or they're, we get a lot of, we screen a little bit projects that we get involved with. There's a budget consideration, and then there's a consideration of also, do we believe that this founder, that the startup, the idea, the product has potential? Because so we get some requests from entrepreneurs who are early on their journey, and they still don't have the idea doesn't make sense, or the idea doesn't, and to us at least, or there's at least not a fit. For me, it feels inefficient to go and spend a lot of time talking to people who aren't maybe qualified for the client. So I want to automate as much as possible that qualification process early on, and I want to bring automation to like grab a list and really screen well for the people who I should be talking to, and then invest deeper time in being more human, being more present with the people that add value. But I think it's I was watching a talk yesterday from a Harvard professor at the Autonomous Summit, and she was talking about three types of people that use it, three types of people that use AI, so in three different ways, and it was centaurs. Basically, it had specific names, but the idea was: are you using AI for the strategy, like for your thinking? Are you copy pasting like what it comes out, or are you validating like really what comes out and being and questioning it and going deeper and still not taking it as truth but validating? Yeah, in essence, what was coming out of that is, if you want to learn a specific practice, say if you want to master finance, going to ChatGPT and getting your questions answered and copy pasting the result, it's going to lead you to not learn as much, right? Because you're not as invested in building let's say you're building a business model. You can use AI to help, but if you go and do the practice, you're going to learn a lot more. So I think this human touch also comes with like this conversation with my marketing counterpart but I'm the engineering counterpart, is that the marketing and sales, is that if I'm talking to the customer every day I learn about what the client needs. I'm not in my head trying to imagine needs. I'm talking and listening to real needs, and that has tremendous value in comparison to me spending my day on the computer building automations without knowing the customer. So that's a risk. If I'm building automations, but that I'm trying to reach out to a specific customer, but I haven't spent the time to truly understand what message resonates, then the automation is too early. It's too unhuman. So I think there's some aspects of testing and figuring out what works for a business. What I'm doing at the moment is that I'm doing both. So I know that if I don't spend time automating some tasks, that I will never grow. I will not be, my productivity is not gonna grow, and I can talk to 10 people a day, but I'm going to talk to 10 people today, 10 people tomorrow, and it's not going to, it's going to be a linear growth, and we are in somewhat an exponential time. So that might not be competitive enough. I am spending time to understand the technologies, spending time to put them in practice, automation, and spending time to talk to the customers, to have the human aspect. I think that's kind of the trio that generates the most amount of value and diversifies risk. So that's been my approach and learning.
Nice. That's pretty comprehensive. And I believe in sales. There's always a component in sales that you need a human touch, which I do believe too. Especially as what you said, you need to understand the customers, like who they are, what do they need at a particular moment. Is there a fit? Do they have the budget? But all of those, there are also things that you can also predefine and pre-qualify. And I'm sure your company is actually doing that, right? Altar is also doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't object your your operations and how it is built right now. I always believe in you can only reach to quality through quantity. So the more you do more, the more you speak to clients, the more you kind of really have a well-rounded understanding. So I don't know if that's something that could also give you the belief into the system of Alta right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. You learn in the field, so it goes the same as about like I think especially for entrepreneurship is about being a field researcher, right? To get out of the building, talk to people, the traditional startup advice. Startup advice is that don't stay 6 months in the building. Um, Coding and then building something great that nobody wants. So yeah, I think those rules continue to apply.
Exactly. Those are probably the fundamentals into business. I would believe sales is always the number one to keep everything afloat.
Hmm. Yeah,
Because
it's
if you have a
crucial.
great product but you can't sell it, then there's no point. There's no
Yeah,
business.
exactly. It's a toy.
So that's pretty good. Pretty awesome. I'm learning as well as you're sharing all your thoughts, your opinions, your recommendations. Um, what about, let's just say, if you're talking to an entrepreneur who has little or no tech background right now, and what would be the first step that they would probably start with?
Yeah, so it depends on the where they are in their journey. If they're early in their career, then I would say go learn, you know, because it's never been so easy to learn. We've never had like I have here on the back a C++ book that I bought when I was I went to do my master thesis, and the thesis was I was building this robot. I needed to code the robot in C++, and I did not know C++. It was kind of the first time I was using this programming language. I had coded in some other languages, but it was the first time with this coding language, and I needed to do a thesis. So I bought a book, and I was moving to Switzerland to do the master thesis, and I was kind of like on the road, like on the road, and trying to learn C++ from this book and from the examples in the book, and it was hard to learn and to really understand the intricacies of the code. If I was to do it today with ChatGPT, with like you have a 24-hour tutor that knows infinitely about code, that can explain, all the intricacies, that can help you debug. I've spent, sometimes I would, let's say I was coding something in the robot and it broke down, and I didn't understand the C++ code and you know, and it took me like days until I managed to debug it, and to figure out like what was wrong. And now you can copy paste code into ChatGPT, or you can use like a GitHub Copilot or any of the all the tools um, that allow you to iterate with AI, and you have basically an assistant that helps you debug and reduces a lot the frustration of learning um, something new. So, I mean, I wouldn't say like as an entrepreneur go learn C++. That doesn't make sense, but educate yourself about the different things that are needed in order to build um, a tech stack. So understanding what are the parts of the stack. I think that understanding is going to be incredibly valuable. Even when you get to a point of delegating, because you wanna eventually hire someone, you need to understand if they're good, if they're bad. You need to be able to ask relevant questions. So that would be my suggestion for entrepreneurs early in their journey. For someone who has the 10 years experience in an industry, it's a and so they have a lot of knowledge, they have a lot of expertise, they just don't, it's not in tech, and they see a potential that tech could come and disrupt that business. I might be a little bit biased, but partnering with someone like Altar, where you have a partner that knows technology and knows how to build and launch products and can sit with you and do this iteration process, is one path. Another path might be to hire a CTO, hire someone who have a co-founder that has that experience, those 10 years, 10, 15 years in tech, and you bring your industry expertise. If you can do that, go for it, because it's really amazing. If you have that, and then that gives you, both for fundraising, for for the aspects of your future, like hiring a tech team, all of this, it's going to be useful to have someone who deeply understands tech fully invested in your project. But what happens a lot is that it's become notoriously hard to hire a CTO as well, because if someone is very good in tech, maybe they're working for the Googles and the OpenAIs or they're working on their own startup ideas, or they have so it's, and if you're looking for someone with 10 years, 15 years experience in tech, if either you give them like a big bulk of equity, like you do it 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever equity split you want, but you need to compensate them very well in equity, or you need to give them a lot of money because their opportunity cost is very high. So I've and I can share a bit about my story of getting a tech team. Like in the past, I can code, I can build applications. I've done that, but in my career I've been more the entrepreneur, and then when I was working inside companies, I was a product manager. I had a role as head of growth, kind of like at the intersection of marketing, growth, understanding tech. But I didn't come from a software engineering background and going deep into code. I learned as I go, and kind of like self taught how to code. And so at some point in my startup journey, in the second startup that I launched, I had this debate of like, okay, I think I need someone more technical to take on the CTO role. So this was early on. I started, like, had this idea, did a proof of concept, tested, got like a couple thousand users, which was great. And then okay, I need to professionalize it, and I need to, in a way, wear more the business hat, so that and have someone wear more the tech hat. So I was looking for a CTO, and I got into this challenge of hiring a CTO, because either, like, if I were to spend a lot of money in like hiring the most senior guy, I would have no burn rate. It would be like all my money going to hire a very senior person. But if it was too junior of a person, then it made no sense. Yeah, I needed to kind of remove myself from the tech so I could focus on business and sales and growth. And so if it was someone junior, then I would need to train them, or I would need to spend time as well. So it wasn't easy, and then I ended up finding someone who was fairly junior, but I saw a lot of potential in, and then it didn't went really well, because this person was very had a lot. He was doing a PhD in AI in Switzerland at EPFL, so it was like someone who with a very good background, but it was too academic. It didn't have the entrepreneurial spirit, and so like launching, like, it was very perfectionist on like, and we were launching too late. We're taking too long to launch. So I think hiring, and especially the earlier hires, like culture um, for early stage companies. There's a lot to be said there. Um, so to summarize, it was a long answer, but to summarize, if you have the time, if you're early on your journey, go learn, because these tools are going to be relevant for the next, 50 years of like business is going to fundamentally shift based on these tools. So I believe that everybody should be at least get to a certain level of acquaintance with what's possible with the tools, and that's going to help you shape also your vision of product. Um, and then if you're in a position where you have the budget to hire a professional team to help you really figure out what to build and then go and build it, execute it very well, then I would say do that.
Beautiful. Very comprehensive. What about those entrepreneurs who are running their business already? They're doing pretty well, but they haven't implemented AI yet. It's kind of like the first step. So what about those those piece of the pie?
Yeah. For those entrepreneurs, I see. So there's two areas of implementing AI. One is in processes. So how can you make your company more efficient? How can you make it grow faster? So how to embed AI into sales processes, into marketing, into one is processes, and then the second one is product. Does it make sense for your product to embed to have some AI embedded, to have some functionality that relies on the latest capabilities? So that I see that in kind of those two areas. Depends on the company size. Depends on. I believe that if you're a tech company innovating today, then you know about ChatGPT. You're getting familiar with the tools. You understand the urgency of this changing market, this changing, and you understand that nothing is set in stone. And even if you're having growth and revenue, and if you're having traction today, doesn't mean that you have a secure position. We can see that when Perplexity came out, that even like and ChatGPT, Google, who was kind of like a set in stone paradigm for search, and it was dominating like the market. Nobody thought like, oh, maybe in 2 or 3 years Google is not going to be the way we search. That was like, if you ask 95% of people, everybody would say no, Google is kind of like solid. It's such a big company. And then ChatGPT came out, and people were like, oh, am I going to use now search, or am I going to ask, ChatGPT? And then Perplexity came out, and then, a drop kind of like because now all of a sudden there's other options to Google search, and maybe that give better results. And so even big companies like Google need to continue to innovate to keep their position. And I think Google has done tremendously well in terms of their comeback. But for sure there was a few months when Google was kind of like caught off guard in a way, and even these big companies, like, it's incredible that Apple, such a big company, they've invested so long in Siri and in like this voice conversation, and then the intelligence of Siri was like still like super dumb compared to what was available with ChatGPT, which was then like a startup, a new startup in the scene. So it's very interesting how businesses are kind of open for disruption, especially if they're completely like software businesses. I believe like if you have a logistics business, or something that has more assets, that has more kind of some fundamentals that are harder to change, then it's a little bit more solid. But if you're in a tech business, then definitely I would keep looking at what people are doing in terms of innovation, and educating the team, and spending, allowing the team to spend time learning. And I think we're getting into an era where more and more now it's relevant that we're lifelong learners. This concept of you go to university, you study something, and then you apply it for the rest of your career. It's completely nonsense for the pace of innovation that we're seeing today.
Probably the traditional education would probably be disrupted. It has been disrupted already, I think, but we still follow a system which is very difficult to break. Like we have the educational system, and it's like a qualification to get a job and to start your career and all that. So probably that might change, but it could happen soon. We don't know. We're just speculating. But going back to so that's a pretty much interesting insights that you have shared. And speaking of which, you mentioned about logistics. You mentioned about healthcare. And what are the top, in your opinion, maybe top 5 industry that you can that's going to be that has a higher chance to adopt with AI?
AI?
Yes.
That's a really good question. My hope is that government is in the top 5 because at least my experience of government, growing up in Portugal, and I currently live in Portugal as well. Unfortunately, and it's not I'm not kind of complaining about, governments are systems that are very old, and they've needed to adapt, and they're systems that a lot of things rely on. If you're, the tax system, there's just a lot of complexity and a lot of old systems. The same happens with banks. There are banks where the database, like, you can't, security is so big of an issue, like that, if a database of a bank breaks down and now they don't know who who owns what, it's a pretty big issue. So I think that my hope is that some of these fundamental systems in society, especially like that get to drink a little bit from the capabilities of AI to make them more efficient, because I think that has a big cost. But that's kind of my hope. What I see as big potential for disruption
for government.
I don't think, I think that's a slower pace. It's kind of like optimistic on my side and hopeful. But I think that, other industries will have, I think, in terms of operations, and I think just a lot of industries are going to be impacted. I don't know if I have like a clear idea of like which one is going to be most disrupted. I think education is having a very interesting challenge, because now a 10-year-old kid can go to ChatGPT and ask about quantum physics and get a proper answer explained in his understanding, and he can ask questions back. And I remember, like, as a kid, there's this time in your growth when you're just asking why, or like asking all these questions, and you always ask a deeper question, right? So you're naturally curious about the reality, and naturally curious about understanding what's around and how things work. And so I really see the potential for education to transform, and I think it's gonna turn into, like, the importance of lifelong education is gonna become more and more, with things like these courses we met through the Mind Valley AI Mastery course, and that was an amazing program. I feel like these 700, 800 students who went through this course and got a chance to learn AI every week. I think because of how much things are shifting, having communities of learning is going to become more and more relevant. And things like these masterminds, these groups of joint learning. And I think the way we educate ourselves fundamentally has to change. Now, there's going to be also some barriers to that change, more in the existing infrastructures, existing standards in a way. I see like other industries like or other technologies, like if we look at mobility, I don't see a big disruption in mobility coming. There's been like the autonomous vehicles trend, like for many years, and the electric vehicles, and the electric vehicles are alive, having a big market share already. But in terms of the autonomous vehicles, there's some cities like that already have a little bit of a deployment of those, but it's still very small. Yeah, I'm diverging a little bit, or I'm just exploring. It's hard to say which one industry is going to be the most impacted, because it's such a fundamental, like, the thing is, if you were to ask which industry would the internet change the most, and I think every industry was impacted in some way. Like every company had to have a website, had to think about marketing in in an online way, and then social media came, and that also shifted things. I think this AI revolution, it has the potential to ask us to decide whether we want to hire someone or build a system. There was a post by the founder of Perplexity a couple of days ago that they launched a new feature that allows you to do background research on Perplexity searches the web, but this specific feature allows you to connect to places like Crunchbase, which is this data repository of companies and startups, and do market research. And the post from the CEO of Perplexity was, now you can get a McKinsey analyst for $400 per year. So we're coming to a point where there's really a lot of potential for disruption. We're going to need to be wise about how we approach it and what's the adoption that we want to take, and hopefully stay human centric as well. If we have a company with 100 people, finding ways to upskill them, to make them useful, to inspire them to learn about the new capabilities and continue to evolve. And more I see companies as kind of like living ecosystems, right? So having like, how can we use our people to continue to grow and growing the individuals as a joint mission, and then transforming the company the way it needs to transform to stay competitive. I think that's the way to go.
I love that human-centric approach. And I think the next curious question that I have would be, like, I know that the businesses right now is very competitive. It's just as we talk about LLMs, right? LLMs, one feature is here, and the next thing you know, there's another feature. It's another feature. So it's kind of like grabbing the people here, grabbing here and there. And how would you, in your opinion, like using AI and leveraging what no code tools can do, how can you stay ahead from the curve?
It really depends what industry you're in, what you're trying to do. But how to stay ahead of the curve, I think what comes to my mind is a saying that I think it's from Warren Buffett, but one of my mentors used to say, tell me a lot, which is train with the best, compete with idiots. It was an interesting quote that he would tell me, and this emphasized a little bit about like choosing your battles. Like if I'm to build a startup, my next startup, like it would be not realistic, at least like where I am, like it wouldn't make sense for me to go and build a startup that is trying to compete on foundational models. It's something that I feel like it would be too capital intensive. It would require, like we see, and even in my last startup, it was a text to speech startup, and it's very hard to compete in foundational models because you need to have the best mathematicians, the best like understanding of, like, goes so deep tech that, and there's this very specific timing when that makes sense. But now I'm saying this, and again, DeepSeek this week had this, building a foundational model that they could do it cheaper and have great results. But I think that's really, really an exception. I think that's 1 in a trillion, that gets to compete in foundational models where the battle is so hard right now. And there's so many billions, because it's like you're competing with a billion, with like billions and billions invested, right, from government, from so what I say usually in my talks is that there's a few layers to AI. There's the infrastructure, there's the data layer, infrastructure layer, and then there's the models layer, and then there's the applications and agents layer. Right now, in terms of infrastructure layer, it's a money game. The more money, like how many NVIDIA chips H100 can you buy, like, and make data warehouses that are, how many millions or billions do you have to invest in that infrastructure, set it up, and or to buy on AWS, and rent other people's infrastructure. So it's a money game. So it's very hard for an entrepreneur that doesn't have billions to invest to go and compete there. So that leaves the data, the models, and the applications. I think that 90% of the successful entrepreneurs are going to be in the applications, and applications that might be tailored to a specific client base because they understand the data, or they have some specialized data. For example, in healthcare, healthcare data is very well protected, and some entities have a lot of it, right? That now, with the reasoning capabilities of AI, that can become a superpower because you have the data. A new startup cannot compete with you on data, right? You have the better data, so grabbing this data, can you create something that is unique with existing models? You don't need to go and reinvent the models, right? If we talk about models, there was, I think it was already like 6 months ago, that Hugging Face crossed 1 million models, open source models published. So research labs, individuals training a model, spending money on compute, and then open sourcing the model. There's 1 million of those there. So if you go and train a model, it's like you're going to be competing with the, it's going to be already 1 in a million that is open source. And then you're going to have to, and to train a model, either you have better data, better math, but it's a very hard game. It's a very hard game. And so I think the successful entrepreneurs are going to be people with industry expertise, who understand the client very well, and who can partner with someone who can partner either like building a team, or who can partner with someone who can help on the tech front, or if they themselves have that understanding as well. But I think that having that experience, for example, in healthcare, and having access to the data, and then crunching that data with AI, I think is going to be very interesting.
Wow, there's so much that I've learned from this podcast, and probably we would probably come to an end of an enjoyable moment with you. Just two more questions to unleash more of the things that you have as a knowledge, as a wisdom. In terms of reading time, and this is one of the biggest question that you can see in the market, like entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or established businesses The biggest thing right now, we have so many gadgets, we have so many tools, hardware, computers, phones. We don't even have time for ourselves. How, for you, using no code AI tools has freed up your personal growth and, of course, other aspects of your life?
That's a great question, and it's important to emphasize. It has brought me on a journey. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have come on a journey also of, in a way of of healing, which is an interesting word. Like in a journey of seeking to find calm, because like so I'll tell you a story. When I was in Silicon Valley doing this accelerator, I had to pitch every week. So it was 14 weeks. Every week I was pitching to investors, and I remember downloading the Headspace app and doing a meditation for the first time. I can remember this was 7, 8 years ago. I remember where I was sitting and like listening to this meditation about the cars passing and trying to calm my thoughts, because it's very we live in a very fast-paced world with a lot of shiny objects, and so it's very important to stay grounded and have some practices that allow you to stay calm, because if the potential for overwhelm is very large, and the one big lesson for me has been that if I'm overwhelmed, I'm also not performing at my best. I need a certain level of calmness. I need a certain level of clear mind and equanimity, in a way, detachment from the outcome, to feel that okay, I can have this conversation without being too stressed about it, and then the discourse flows better. In terms of having AI and these latest tools play a role in it, one of the things that I've done, and I think a lot of people have done, is use ChatGPT as a therapist, and as a business consultant. So a few months back, I had a lot of projects. I tend to take on more than I can chew in a way. I'm passionate, and I wanna create things, and at some point I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and I just remember grabbing the ChatGPT and the voice feature, and just kind of like talking like everything that was on my mind, all the projects. Oh, I have this to do, and I have this, and I have this, and I have this, and then I finished with, now based on everything that I told you, I want you to give me a detailed list of the actions that I have on my plate. And it gave me a 14 items list of like, oh, there's this thing and there's this thing. Okay, and I'll categorize this on personal life and what's work life, what's career. And then it's okay, I have these 5 points on personal life, and I have these 7 points to figure out in career, let's say. Oh, I need to negotiate this. Okay, what's the highest priority for me? What's really I'm overwhelmed. Why? Is it because it's too many things? So I think having a kind of a pocket assistant to help me think has been super useful. And at times it's a very detached. Also, ChatGPT is not too emotional about it, right? I can feel emotional about a situation, but if I explain it and get back kind of a less emotional perspective, that really helps. It has helped me negotiate contracts. It has helped me, yeah. So it's really, kind of a good assistant. In a way.
I really like the way you put it, as ChatGPT doesn't have emotional attachment. So it's like having a pocket coach that just helps you whenever you need it, and doesn't put his emotions within the roadblock that you have, or the emotions that's running in your blood.
So exactly.
So well, the thing that we want to communicate to the audience right now. So how can the entrepreneurs like listening today in this podcast apply no code tools in their businesses without feeling overwhelmed? Because that is the biggest thing that they would probably have a roadblock when they're going to jump the first step. What's your advice?
Yeah, so I think there's an aspect of education. So understanding, I did some webinars late last year. Now I'm working on a program, actually, that I'll release soon, about, and I think there's an aspect to education of the team, education of the leaders, and then choosing tools. I think that today, it's, as I see technology, it would be very safe to choose one of each category. So choose like a make.com, choose a ChatGPT, and Airtable, or even like with the Google Sheets, you use like one of each category, and just grab a couple use cases that are relevant, and start. There's resources from these platforms, like make.com has Academy. There's many resources. You have always YouTube, and I would say invest a little bit in that education as well. So it's worth it. So the idea, if you invest in your staff as well, learning about AI, then they can increase their own productivity by 40%, 50%, and then have more time to think about how they can really add value to your business. So yeah, investing in the education of the people who are dedicated to working in your team. I think that's always a good investment.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. So Rui, thank you for having in my podcast, and it's been a pleasure to really learn from you from this podcast, and hopefully our audience will also get a lot of takeaways. I got a takeaway. I have a few. And of course, if let's say they wanted to look for you, where is the best place?
I think LinkedIn would be the best place. So Rui Vas, which is RUI space VAS. So that's and you'll find me. And I think that would be the best place. And feel free to reach out and drop me a message. I'm usually very accessible, and always excited to hear about entrepreneurs' stories, and dive deeper and see how I can be of support. And thank you so much, Justin. This was really amazing, and good luck on the growth of the podcast, and all the projects that you're involved in as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.